What's happening, YouTube? Owen here from Dark Entertainment, the place to hear tales from Wales and afar. If you're into creepy stories donated to us by people like yourselves, then feel free to like and subscribe, and hit that bell icon. Now, let's get into the video. So I've started to run thin in my current backlog of stories from the period where I went AWOL. It may take me a few weeks to do some research on the many properties I have on my quite extensive list. However, this has given me the opportunity to look into a story sent to me by one of my viewers. Enter stage left, Andrew Dexter. Now I'll start off by saying that this is not my experience, and therefore I hope that I can do the story justice. I feel very privileged that Andrew has requested that I tell the tale. But, I confess, I do feel a slight apprehension. Anyone who knows me will tell you that I can make a meal out of a Mars bar and tend to get myself into more shit than the back leg of a cow. So Andrew, I hope that this works well, and that you don't end up hunting me down and giving me a kick-in for making the hash out of it. Welcome to Gladstone Villa. So let's head back 100 years. In 1923, a young man called Michael Kimmiett married his sweetheart, Evelyn Rowlands, in Merthyr Tydfil. Not long after getting married, they moved further south to an area north of Cardiff called Bargoed. And soon after, Evelyn gave birth to a beautiful baby boy called Elvin. But the happiness wasn't to last. Sadly, Elvin became ill and passed away at just 4 months old in 1924. No parent should have to see the death of their child, and certainly at such an early age. Safe to say, it destroyed the young couple, and Evelyn never fully recovered from the loss. Michael and Evelyn stayed in the villa in Bargoed until the 1940s. Evelyn eventually died in 1970. Several families lived at the property from the 1940s, but things took a strange turn in the same year as Evelyn passed. In 1969, the Dexter family had moved into Gladstone Villa shortly before Andrew Dexter was born. New life in the house was something that the house did not want, and so the strange occurrences began. The Dexter family lived in Gladstone Villa from 1969 until 1978. After Andrew was born, the family experienced minor disturbances, knocking on the walls, lights flickering, and things moving of their own accord. Now this could naturally be put down to water pipes banging, faulty electrical cabling, or forgetfulness. However, it got worse. One fateful evening, whilst the family sat watching TV, they all jumped to the sound of an enormous bang coming from the upstairs landing. They rushed upstairs fearing that something had fallen or broken, but were horrified to find something worse. They looked on in fear at the sight of an open loft hatch, as though someone had just jumped from the roof void onto the landing. As terrifying as this was to think that someone had been hiding in their attic, it wasn't as terrifying as the thought that they hadn't heard any footsteps running away and nothing stood before them. They searched the house, but could not find any sign of an intruder. From here, the presence became more intense. The sound of footsteps and dragging echoed through the house. Primarily it came from Andrew's grandparents' bedroom, but whenever they opened the door to see what it was, they were met with an empty room. The sound of a baby crying echoed through the corridors, but when the family members went looking for the sound, once again they were met with eerie silence. The strangeness continued. In the living room, hanging on the wall, was an old tin bath. This used to be a common sight in Wales, since many families used to bath their children in tin baths in front of the fire. In many cases, the tin bath used to be hung up on the wall, even after a normal bath had been installed. Kind of a relic of the old past. Now this was such an occurrence at Gladstone Manor. The tin bath hanging on the wall. But on this particular night, the tin bath lifted cleanly off the hook and clattered down to the ground, scaring the entire family. The photo that you see on screen now is a picture of one of those tin baths. As you can imagine, the sound must have been deafening. Family members began noticing more and more that objects were moving, and in one instance, an ironing board had been placed upon Andrew's father whilst he slept. Who knows why the entity chose this item? Perhaps the stereotypical image of a ghost in a white sheet is more accurate than we think, and that they are unable to operate the ironing board or the iron. Everyone needs iron sheets, I suppose. But enough of the Three Stooges humour. I need to be more professional. This isn't my story. Sorry, Andrew. Andrew himself recalls an odd occurrence with certain shows on the TV being turned off by an unseen entity, namely religious shows. To be fair, I felt the same every time my grandparents turned on songs of praise. Owen, behave. And on one occasion, seeing the electrical cables being ripped from the wall by an unseen force. The terrifying experiences were now becoming commonplace, and word had spread throughout Bargoed about the haunting at Gladstone Villa. Many didn't believe it until they visited the house looking for a rational explanation, but ended up playing a game of F about and find out. On one occasion, Andrew's mother had seen something out of the corner of her eye. She turned to see the terrifying apparition of a monk standing in the corner of a room. Her eyes widened as she watched the figure, when suddenly it vanished. The Dexters sold the property to two Italian businessmen who converted it into the Reds Park Hotel, where, according to staff, the ghostly hauntings continued. One member of staff stated that in one of the rooms, the translucent image of a bride was stood looking out of the window before vanishing right in front of them. After the Dexters left Gladstone, and when Andrew was much older, he tried to find an explanation for the hauntings. According to him, there was a death of a new bride in one of the rooms. Unfortunately, I've not been able to find anything on this case though. So is there any explanation for these utterly shocking encounters? The monk is possibly the easiest to explain, since Gladstone Villa is situated on the grounds of a 16th century monastery. The main building of the monastery has now been converted into a large house, and the only other photos that remain are some grainy black and white photos showing the state of disrepair. The sound of the baby could be the spirit of poor Elvin, crying in his final moments, and possibly the reason for all of this erupting in 1970 may be the tormented soul of Evelyn pining for the son she lost in a place where, historically, women were forbidden, and therefore stirring the restless spirits of the monks. But what do I know? I'm just a voice on the internet that tells ghost stories for a hobby. But you never know what might be lurking in the darkness. My partner and I visited Bargoed, and we found the old Gladstone villa. It is now a care home, and therefore we didn't think that it was particularly appropriate that we start ringing the doorbell and asking about ghosts in front of residents. Having worked in a care home myself, reality can sometimes be difficult to grasp for some of the residents. Start introducing paranormal activities into it, and it's a recipe for disaster. I wouldn't wish to upset anyone further. I'd like to thank Andrew for getting in contact. It's always nice when a fan gets in touch, and especially when they think high enough of the madness that I churn out to ask me to try to do their story justice. I hope that I have done that. Well, that's all from us here at Dark Entertainment. We hope that you've enjoyed the episode. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, and on Facebook. If you have a story that you would like me to share, please leave me a comment, get in touch via one of our social media pages, or drop me an email at dark_entertainment@outlook.com. I will be discussing the dark stories of Llandaff in Llandaff itself on the 20th of October. If you are interested in attending this event, please get in touch for details. And remember, stay dark, stay creepy, and always laugh. Ta-ta!